Good afternoon and welcome to the SILA Foundation September webinar, a fireside chat with outgoing NASA President Leslie Van Buskirk. My name is Julie Mendel and I'm the Education Trustee for the SILA Foundation. Before introducing today's guests, I have just a few housekeeping items for everyone. This webinar is 1 hour in length and is being recorded. Within the next week, you will receive a link to the recording and a post-webinar survey that we would appreciate you completing. We ask that you mute your microphones and turn off your videos so the focus stays on our speakers. We also ask that you put your questions in the chat box. We will be monitoring and posing the questions to the speaker on your behalf if time allows at the end of the session. Thank you for joining our 4th annual Fireside Chat. Today's moderator is Margie Weber. Margie currently serves as the Regulatory Director of Compliance, focusing on the securities and insurance industries at Reg Ed. She has served as President of SILA, Governance Chair, Securities Industry Subgroup, Steering Committee, and as a member of SILA's Advisory Board. She has also served on FINRA's Licensing and Registration Council, Regulation and Qualification Subcommittee, and she currently serves as the moderator of SILA's NASAA and State Engagement Task Group. She's also the SILA Foundation's Compliance Trustee. Leslie Van Buskirk is NASAA's 2024-2025 outgoing president, has been the administrator of the Division of Securities at the Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions since 2016, after serving as an enforcement attorney and supervisor for 14 years. In 2012, she received an honorable mention for the 29th Annual Virginia Hart Award for her service to the state of Wisconsin. She is a member of the Wisconsin Statewide Abuse in Later Life, CCR. And in addition to serving as president of NASAA, she served as the NASA representative on the SEC Investment Advisor Committee for 4 years, with a stint as vice chair. And prior to serving on the board, she served for 2 years as chair of the broker-dealer section after 10 years of section committee service. She has received a NASA Distinguished Service Award for work toward improving securities arbitration for investors. And she's also chaired the NASA Exam Advisory Committee. As you can tell, we have a lot of expertise on today's call for our fireside chat. So please join me in welcoming Margie Weber and Leslie Van Buskirk to our virtual stage.
Thank you, Julie. Welcome, Leslie. So Leslie is the outgoing NASA president. So NASA is the North American Securities Administrators Association. And Leslie, I don't think some people may not be aware of NASA. You want to try to give us an overview of who NASA is, what they do?
Sure. And let me start by saying that, I haven't met most of you before, but I'm sure you have met my secret weapon, Deb Fabritz. She's also NASA's CE guru, and I want to give her a shout out. And also, now that I'm not NASA president anymore, I have to give the disclaimer that I am speaking only for myself and not for NASA or, the superiors at my division as well. So NASA is the oldest investor protection organization internationally. It was formed in 1919. So we actually predated NASA. So when people say, why are you calling yourself NASA? We were there first. We have in Mexico and the territories of each of those, and DC, of course. And NASA is a great organization and it allows us to streamline our communication among our members. We collaborate on investigations, examinations. We create model rules and statements of policy that then can be later deployed as wished by the individual jurisdictions. The members do act on their own while the engagement is facilitated by NASA. It's up to the member to either participate in a multi-state or not, or to adopt a rule or not. We partly do it to encourage uniformity among our members, but we do find that engagement among our membership does encourage diverse opinions, which often lead to better outcomes. And as always, our focus is on investor protection for our NASA activities.
So NASA is not a regulator, correct?
No, it is not a regulator. So,
it's
but members are entirely regulators, but not the entity itself.
Perfect. So you've spent over 2 decades in the securities regulation field. So what inspired you to pursue this line of work?
Well, it was interesting. After several years at a civil litigation firm, I had been working with a partner on some securities class action litigation, and we had a case that was had been previously investigated by one of the attorneys at the Division of Securities, and we met with him to find out more about his investigation. I remember thinking to myself as I left, "Wow, that would be my dream job." And then a few years later, it opened up, and miraculously, I got it. And I have loved what I do ever since that moment. I started as an enforcement attorney, became the enforcement supervisor. Um, you know, it's, I love the fact that our focus is protecting investors. And I love the fact that as a government attorney, you get to do what you think is the right thing,
Right,
which I think is beautiful.
right, I agree. So what emerging challenges do you foresee for the state securities regulators in the coming year?
Well, the question focuses on challenges, but my answer is going to be one that's couched as both a challenge and possibly an opportunity.
Perfect.
Congress and federal agencies are actively working on laws and regulations that address crypto and distributed ledger technologies. We're working to ensure that these efforts carry forward the robust investor protection, including at the state level, that have made our markets the best in the world. We want to make sure that these advances don't come at the expense of investor protection by reducing state oversight and anti-fraud authority. It presents us as state regulators with the opportunity to remind lawmakers of the work that we do to tackle investment fraud, especially fraud driven by online scams. Since 2017, state securities regulators have brought over 330 enforcement actions on investment fraud involving crypto. These have been, yeah, I'm sorry.
Amazing. It's shocking that there's been that many.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's such a huge thing. I think in my office alone, probably 50% of the complaints we get involve a crypto fraud.
That's amazing.
So that's a big focus of ours. We see them used in Ponzi schemes. We see them used in coin offerings. We've seen them in recovery scams or crypto mining cases. The crypto fraud and AI scams have been one of the top investor threats in the past couple of years. And I would refer you to NASAA's website for the enforcement report, which will tell you more about what we've been finding. Now, I think our most recent one online is 2023. The 2024 one hopefully will be released in the next several weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, our biggest concerns right now are preemption of state authority, especially anti-fraud authority, either directly by, for instance, treating DeFi firms differently than traditional broker-dealers for regulatory purposes, or through the effect of the changes that are being considered by Congress to the investment contract analysis. NASAA members, every day, we use the investment contract analysis to determine whether an offering is a security or not. And we need that flexibility so we can reach the creative new scams that are being designed. Often we're the investor's last hope because no one else will take their case. So we collaborate with law enforcement and other regulators, including multi-state investigations. But the problem that can be if by changing the investment contract analysis, an offering is no longer a security, it takes us out of the equation altogether, and then there's no one.
Right.
So that's a big concern of ours. And while state regulators weren't fans of it, we haven't in the past been fans of NISMIA. It has become the law of the land for almost 30 years now. And financial professionals and law firms understand it and know where the lines are drawn for state and federal regulators. So rather than abandoning that approach in favor of one that looks to the type of technology being used, that would only sow confusion among the firms and the registrants. We feel that it would be simpler to work within that existing NISMIA framework. We strongly oppose changing the investment contract analysis, as I stated before, and we're encouraging the adoption of the SAFE Act, which is a short savings clause preserving anti-fraud authority over securities transactions and market participants in digital and traditional markets. The goal of the SAFE Act is to preserve state anti-fraud authority. That means don't lie, cheat, or steal, while providing the flexibility for federal lawmakers to enact laws classifying products as digital commodities.
Mhm.
So that's one category of our concerns.
Mhm.
I have another one if you want me to go into that.
For those that may not be aware that are joining the call, NISMIA that you mentioned, that's the National Securities Market Improvements Act. I think it was like in the mid 90s that came around. So just FYI about that for those that don't know.
Right.
So go ahead.
That's the one where we are limited to in some of our rules to doing no more than what the SEC does and
Right, like
dividing.
record keeping. You can't enforce additional record keepings on top of what the federal record keeping requirements are. That was one provision of
And the
NISMIA.
investment advisor division, I think, was part of that.
Yeah,
So,
maybe. Yeah, it's been a long time. I like
it
mid
has.
90s, I think. So
Yeah.
what other emerging challenges or
So
opportunities?
another challenge that we have, and it also could be considered an opportunity, would be with regard to the provisions that are being considered in Congress by in line with the Future Job Act type legislation. The expansion of the private markets and accredited investors. That's a big issue. The Investor Advisory Committee just considered that, and a recommendation that they put forth last week. And I would encourage you guys to look at Andrea Sight is our current rep, and she provided a statement of NASAA's views with regard to that recommendation. But we've been generally concerned that the public markets are suffering due to the expansion of the private markets because companies are staying private longer and allowed to have more investors before they have to go public. The private markets, were traditionally for sophisticated investors, but due to the ease of Reg D and the reason that it was supposed to be for sophisticated investors was because it's so, there's information asymmetry, there's limited disclosure required, there's illiquidity risk. So mostly it was designed for institutional investors and venture capitalists who can negotiate to get the best terms. Retail investors really weren't considered appropriate investors in those markets. But with the ease of using Reg D, there is a push to expand it to accredited individuals, which, I think would in order to make that, I would prefer that and this is just me personally, I prefer to see them focus on the public markets. But if they do permit more retail investors into the private markets, I think that there would need to be updated financial thresholds to account for inflation's effects, reasonable limits on participation to some level, having some degree of knowledge, experience, or training in investing in private investments would be important because most retail investors don't really understand those risks. And I think there should be some Reg D reform that would enforce the filing requirements and add some reporting in addition to that. So that's another
Makes sense.
area where I feel like we're going to be spending a lot of focus.
Yeah, we're kind of in the wild, wild west there, even, in the private markets, because you just don't know what's going on. You don't have all that data that you do in the public markets. So the accredited investor definition, from what I'm hearing, NASA representatives would probably prefer it just be left as it is and not diminished. Or do you
Well,
think it
definitely
should be
not
changed
diminished.
here?
We actually think that the threshold should be raised
Okay.
to account for inflation. When the accredited investor definition was first created under Reg D, I believe it was something like 3% of the population actually qualified as an accredited investor, whereas now, because of the way inflation has developed and the way the economy has been, it's up to somewhere between 20 and 25% of households would qualify as accredited investor, which is a
Interesting.
lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know speaking personally again, I don't know that level we're at now is that concerning, but I think that the projections have shown that if this continues, it'd be 50% by like 2040.
I see. Okay.
And so
So
I
it does
we
make sense
definitely
to
need to
me.
put some brakes on that growth, right? And I just think that, I mean, there are other things I think being creative. Like if you took out the retirement assets, because that, if this is just money people are, if you put like a small limit, like up to 10% of your, available liquid net worth or what have you, and limit it so that somebody's not going to lose their whole retirement on it. Or if you said, we're going to consider you to be an accredited investor, but we're not going to count your retirement assets toward it, then maybe we could, maybe it
Right.
wouldn't be, but I think that right now, our big concern is that people would be gambling with money or even just locking up money that they really need, or that they might need, reasonable chance that they may need
Mhm.
within the next several years in an investment where they can't get out, where liquidation is limited, where they didn't really understand what it was they were getting into. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, I understand this. I own a house. I know how real estate works, but that's not, commercial real estate is a whole different ballgame.
Right. Right.
So,
Well, the accredited investor definition, I can't even say it. It's been being talked about for several years now.
it
It's been an
has.
ongoing trend. So, digital assets definitely. It's all everybody's talking about right now. Cryptocurrency, digital assets, the stable coins. I mean, it's just definitely emerging trends within the market. So it's not a boring industry that we live
No,
in.
it is not. And I should also say that, these are my views as of today, and they may change totally in a week or two. You just never know depending on what happens, right?
And another thing, that it seems like the state regulators are constantly trying to protect their authority. It just seems like just year over year over year, that's a topic that NASA has to address. So
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
I mean, I live in Missouri. I would contact my Missouri securities regulator if I had some sort of fraud. I wouldn't call the feds. So I'm like, who would you call?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So you've been a strong advocate for protecting older investors. Can you share more about your work with the Wisconsin Elder Justice Coalition and how that may have, shaped NASA's priorities?
Well, I guess I'll take your question and like twist it a tiny bit, because really I would say that NASA's policies have impacted our participation, our views, but um, it basically went way back in the early 2010s. We started to realize that there were issues with exploitation of older adults, and diminished capacity was becoming more of a problem. And we wanted to figure out ways that we could, you always had your guardianship, right? But we kind of felt like we needed a little bit of a safety net for people who still had their faculties, but were being exploited by either someone using influence or manipulation, or just being defrauded, that would be more of an, entitle them to more protection and provide them with a safety net, um, you know, before they get to a point where they needed a guardianship or anything. It's really supposed to
Right.
be, something to catch people while they're still fully capacity, but still vulnerable because of the way these scam artists work to financial exploitation. Um,
Right.
so NASA
It's
had,
harder and harder to detect all along. I mean, every day it's getting harder and harder to detect. So.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. I mean, right now, well, I'll go back and give a little more history.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Yeah, in 2016, NASA adopted the Model Act to protect vulnerable adults. I may not have that exactly right, but we often shorthand it to the Report and Hold Law. Um, it has been now adopted in 43 states and provides that if you have a reasonable suspicion of financial exploitation, you can put a temporary hold on the transaction. Well, actually, the model rule said disbursement. Many of the states have adopted it as transaction. I think the FINRA rule, which is kind of parallel with this, is transaction. It's been really successful in the states who have adopted it. They've been able to prevent some money from leaving the account, which is really The whole point is that once this money is gone, it's extremely difficult to get it back. So you want to stop it before it heads out the door.
Yeah.
And there have been, and it kind of like, I love the NASAA rule because it kind of fills that gap between, you've got the FINRA rules and you've got the Senior Safe Act that was adopted around the same time as the FINRA rules. And this kind of fills in the gap with the holding and the reporting. We have not been able to adopt the version in Wisconsin yet, unfortunately, which I will keep trying and trying until we do. But we, because we were unable to do that, I've spent a lot of energy participating in the Wisconsin Elder Justice Coalition, where we're trying to tear down those silos that you would have between your securities regulators, your financial institutions, your adult protective service workers, your law enforcement, your prosecutors. Get everyone talking, everyone understanding what the situation is, because, you see a lot of cops that would be like, oh, it's a civil matter. We don't have anything to do with this. No, it's a crime. And,
Right.
Trying to educate each other about what we all do and how we can work together better to help older adults. And so one of the things that the Elder Justice Coalition has been focusing on is the development of financial abuse specialist teams. And Wisconsin is a state where our adult protective services are within our counties. And so we have 72 counties in the state. Each of them have their own adult protective service workers, and there has never been in the past a lot of communication between them. And so we're trying to correct this. Part of that's being done at the Department of Human Services, but also we are focusing on it through these FAST teams. When we first started this project, we had 3 counties that are 3 most populous counties, Dane, Milwaukee, and Waukesha County, had FAST teams. But now there was a grant program that the Department of Justice in Wisconsin had started. It's had several different names, but we're now the Elder Abuse Coalition. We now have 22 counties participating in 12 teams across the state, which I think is really impressive. And I'm really proud of that fact. The Division of Securities is staffing a staff member on each of those teams, because I think it's really important that they know that we're here and they can reach out to us when they have suspicions, and then we can help get other people involved if need be. I also, when I speak like this, encourage, if your members live in an area that has a FAST team and they're interested in getting involved in one, to reach out to them. Because part of it is having someone with that financial background that knows how banks work, how securities firms work, that, we kind of fill that gap right now, but there's no reason that people couldn't get in, reach out and get involved on their own as well. We try and brainstorm solutions to individual cases that people bring. We talk about education. We, go out and do public events. It's been a really good way to try and make up for the fact that we don't have the report and hold law, which I still think we will hopefully get eventually. I wanted to also mention on the NASAA front that NASAA has a victim restitution fund that it adopted in 2021. There's only been 6 states so far that have it. 3 adopted it before NASAA had adopted it. 3 of them adopted it post. It was Montana, Indiana, Vermont, Ohio, North Dakota, and Maine. And those funds that were created, they're not, because state funding is so unique to the state, they're not all identical, but for the most part, they all provide a small percentage out of some of them. Some states do it just recoveries from multi-state cases or, enforcement cases they bring. Some of them have a little part that is funded by fees that we receive so that there's at least some continuation of funding. Some of them have just an appropriation, which would be awesome if everyone could do that. But there's a cap on the recovery. I think it's 25% of the loss or $25,000, whichever is less in most states. And those have at least been able to give people who have been defrauded some some small recovery for their loss. It certainly doesn't make up for everything, but it's something. And uh, the one thing about it is the case has to have been something that one of our jurisdictions has handled. So, our
So
senior, oh, go
the
ahead.
victim fund is that you're giving money back to the victim, but it's not actually the victim's money that you have recovered and returned to them.
No, that would be just a restitution order, and
Yeah.
we love it when we can do that. Then they don't need us.
It's
Then
probably
they
more
wouldn't need
rare.
that fund if they'd recovered it, but yeah. Yeah, so it's separate from it's basically if there's been an order, if we've ordered restitution, but they haven't received it because there's nothing,
Right.
which often with a fraud there is.
Right.
You know, it gives them a little something, and you know, it's something that states are considering, and we'll see if more states pick it up. There's also the Senior Issues Committee that's working on some investor education events, and you've probably seen webinars advertised on LinkedIn that we've done, covering all sorts of issues. And the advisory committee of that committee is very active as well. And of course, we encourage the trusted contact use. But anyway, that's kind of a summary of what's up with the seniors.
Thank you for that. Fraud in general, like we were talking about earlier, it's just harder to detect because of the artificial intelligence. It's just making it so much more difficult to detect it. How's NASA and its members, fighting that battle?
This is, to me, this is the scariest area of all, to see how challenging it's been to combat all the scale and complexity of fraud now that it's using social media and artificial intelligence to spread. It seems like the perfect storm of bad things. A lot of it we're trying to do is increase education and awareness by working with our partners in the general public. I really feel like it's going to require an all of society solution to really put a stop to some of these scams, especially because of the AI. You see things like was it the UK that had the grandmother that they created that keeps scammers on the phone? She's actually good artificial intelligence.
I
That was
haven't heard that one.
that was a
That's
very cool. I
clever.
think her name was Dolly or something like that.
Oh.
And that was very clever. But so much of it is used for bad, right? And there are people that give, seminars on LinkedIn where you see like how they can make themselves look like somebody else so easily. And it's
creepy.
It is so creepy. So, we've been trying to work with our partners across law enforcement, other agencies, other nonprofits, trying to get the word out, do what we can. We do try and work to when we do get these reports, which like I was saying, we get so many cases of a crypto scam. Sometimes it's an investment scam and we can issue an order, and then we do. Sometimes it may not be something that technically falls under our jurisdiction, but we created in Wisconsin, and I think California and DC also have these, and there may be other states as well by now, an investment scam tracker that we put on our website. It gives a little description of the type of things we're seeing, and it puts in each case and identifies, to the extent it can, the party that was doing the misconduct, and describes what happened to the victim, so that it's kind of a cautionary tale for other victims that might be thinking about investing and come across the site. We're hoping that maybe it can stop people in their tracks when they see, oh my God, that's what this guy's doing to me. So we've done that. We actually invested in some tracking software, which was quite expensive, that allows us to track the crypto. It's not always, in most instances, you probably can't recover it, but we have had some instances where the stars aligned and we were able to freeze a transaction. One of them recently, we were able to freeze a stable coin purchase of, I want to say $300,000 or something like that. Because it was a stable coin that cooperated with us, a website that, you know, the site developer, or not, you know, the people
Yeah, I don't know
in
how
websites
the
worked with us.
holder of that website.
Yeah, so if, you know, if the stars align, you know, it is actually possible to freeze the transaction. Now, I don't know how long it'll take for the people to actually get access to their money again, but at least the bad guy doesn't have access anymore. So
Yeah,
that's a win.
you know, when we were talking a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the you guys were having luck with some website disruption successes. So
Yes,
that's wonderful. That's something positive because it just seems
yeah,
like it's
it's a
always
great,
fraud, fraud, fraud. Not a lot you can do about it. So
yeah. I mean, you know, maybe it's whack-a-mole because, you know, who knows if they pop up and do a new site as soon as you're done. But what we found is sometimes when you're pursuing one website and you go to the website, I cannot think of the word. Anyway, when you go to the person running that website, the host or whatever of the website.
host, I think that's the word we're
Yeah.
looking for. Yeah. The
So
website host.
so when you go to them, sometimes you'll find out that, you know, yes, they, you know, you can let them know that, look, this is fraud here, and you've got victims, you've got, you know, all the signs, and they will be like, okay, we'll shut it down. But then you find out they also have 20 more, they're doing the exact same thing. And that way you're able to kind of shut them all down, which is
Yeah.
good. And so we've been using that as a tactic quite a bit. I think that state regulators altogether have shut down hundreds of scams with tens of thousands of investors involved. I know that just this last month, I think we had 112 sites we were able to shut down. So that was really good. And we've been engaging with the policymakers again to make sure that we were able to keep this anti-fraud jurisdiction so we continue to do the work that we do. Because if we lose the jurisdiction, then, you know,
Right.
somebody else is going to have to do the chasing. And I'm not
Exactly.
sure that there's other
Who's
agencies
it
that
going to
will.
be? Yeah. So
Yeah.
the education, you know, the alerts, the investor alerts and things that NASAA's posting, they're always very, very insightful. And although I don't use Facebook for professional purposes, I do follow NASA on Facebook because I have a lot of people, you know, that are connected to me on Facebook that are elderly, and that, you know, I think the more information we can push out to people, about the fraud, you know, gets just awareness of fraud is that's what I use Facebook for from a business perspective. So just throwing that out to the folks that are listening. You can follow NASA on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, all that, and share those very insightful educational alerts. So
No, I agree. I think that the sharing on Facebook reaches people who are probably more in need than, say, some of the other ones that, you know,
I
other
agree.
platforms that you can do it on. So yeah, and that's how so many get started, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times like somebody will respond to something I posted saying it's usually an older man in a military uniform with a flag behind him talking about how, you know, I seem like a nice person and didn't like to talk to me.
Patriot.
And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So here we
Yeah,
go.
it's creepy, but that is one positive thing about social media, that you can, you know, even though it's used a lot for fraud, you can like kind of educate people about it. So
Yeah, yeah. And it does help some. I mean, it's certainly, it's such an interesting thing, right? Because I think education is so important, because I think the more you hear about it, the more your ears are going to like prick up and say, oh, I got to be careful about this.
right,
But
right,
on the other hand, these scammers are so effective. The way they use fear and get you in an emotional state where you're not using your better judgment.
right.
And it can happen to anyone. I mean,
Mm,
it's like, you know, whether it's fear of, you know, your account's been hacked and someone's stealing all of your money, or you're going to be arrested, or this new love of your life is going to abandon you or what have you. I mean,
right.
these fear instincts are very strong and they override a lot. And I think that sometimes you hear people being very critical of the people who do fall for these scams, but I think you have to give them some grace because, it could happen to anyone.
Right. Well, and you got it. I mean, especially that a lot of those individuals are very lonely, and they're just getting
Yeah.
kind of sucked in, here's the
Yeah.
social, I'm being social, it's being fun, then the next thing they know, they have nothing. That's very, very.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. The more isolated are you, the more vulnerable to this you are.
Mhm.
And sometimes the family doesn't find out about it until the person's gone, which is really
Right,
sad, you know.
right.
So
Our information security team had recently did some internal training so that we could try to spot some artificial intelligence, visual and audio stuff. Because I mean, you could trick my husband with my voice if
yeah,
I've I've recorded a lot. My voice is recorded on the internet, and you could trick my husband. Um,
yeah.
it's kind of creepy. But they were telling us about the audio stuff. So if you look at their hands, because apparently AI is not real good with fingers. So I have all 10 fingers here. But so look at the hands on your AI. Your AI fraudsters probably have like 4 fingers, or the thumbs over here or something. So it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting. So never a dull day.
No, that kind of training would be great. I would, that's what knowing what to look for is so important. And also the monotone voice, right? Like when they're automating your voice, it's kind of more of a monotone like
Right.
this.
Right. Well, this particular video that they showed was of our president. It sounded like him. Even the inflections in his voice kind of sounded like him. But, he'd pick his hand up and there'd be like, what is that, a finger? You can't tell what it is even. So
Wow.
I think that's why cartoon characters only have a couple fingers, because the digits are hard to.
Yeah, right. It's too hard. Oh, that's funny.
uh, so what advice would you give the next generation of state securities regulators or compliance professionals?
Oh, this is such a hard question. I mean, on one hand, keep your eyes open for sure, right? Watch for trends, keep up with developments, engage with each other, engage with your regulators, engage with your clients. If you see something, say something.
Yeah. Good one.
um, yeah. I think, so one of the things that surprised me when I got involved in securities regulation was that I had just assumed that because I was going to somebody for investment advice and I knew nothing about it, that they would have a duty to act in my best interest or advise me in my best interest. And so, the whole development of Reg BI to me is a important development. And I think that, we all want what's best for investors, and just making sure that's always the focus would be another thing I would say.
Right. Good one.
So,
So, what's the best advice you've ever been given or received? What
uh,
is the best advice you've ever given or have received?
oh, okay. I don't know that I don't know if I've ever given anyone
I'm sure
so
you
I
have.
can't go with that one, but I will go with received.
Okay.
And if I can, if I can give you 3 pieces of advice that I have, and of course, I think this one will resound with everyone because I think everyone's mother probably told them this at one time or another. But if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Probably is.
So that is number 1. And then another one is something that Patty Struck told me when I was working with her. She told me that, if you're offered an opportunity to grow, you need to say yes. And that's advice I've tried to follow, even though sometimes it's really scary and hard.
Mhm. Good advice.
Sometimes you feel like you just don't have time.
Yeah, depending on how old you are, that's good advice.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then when I was at, um, so I tend to be really passionate about the issues that I care about. And I always want things to be ideal, right? I always want it to be perfect. And one of my bosses, when I first started with the division, had told me, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that has served me well on more than one occasion.
That's a good one.
So,
Perfection is a myth, I think.
so yes. So.
So do you have any final thoughts, Leslie? Well, first let's go to Julie. Julie, do we have any things, anybody in the chat have any questions? And I want to thank, I see several state regulators out here on the attendee list. So thank you all for joining us. I told Leslie there would be some state regulators out there. So thank you for not making me a liar.
And if you guys need to correct me on anything, please do.
Come on, let's go. Let's have a party.
No, we don't. We do not have any questions. It's been a great conversation. So I guess if you guys have any final thoughts to wrap it up.
I have no final thoughts other than I'm wishing Marnie good luck. I hope she'll be our 5th annual NASA outgoing president webinar next year. So
Yeah, I'm sure she will. She's going to be fantastic. I'm very excited to see what she achieves this year. It's going to be really good. She's really a great person for this job. And I just want to thank you guys for inviting me to come talk to you. I hope I didn't get too out there.
no,
You know, stay engaged, communicate, and thanks for helping us keep investors safe.
Thank you, Leslie. I think Julie's got some closing comments, but I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Well, Margie and Leslie, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us this afternoon, for being such a great friend to SILA and the SILA Foundation. We appreciate both of you and your time this afternoon. As a reminder to everyone, our webinars are free of charge. They are open to the public. We love it when you share our invitations and get more people involved. Watch out for and complete the post-webinar survey and plan to join us in November for a presentation on digital predators, how AI is transforming the cybercrime landscape. I know, perfect.
Wow.
No webinar in October because of the conference, so we really hope to see everybody there and then again in November. So everyone have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Leslie. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. Have a great conference.
Take care.